Hi, this is Delphine O'Keefe from Embody My Truth, and today I'm going to be talking about the topic of emotions and feeling our feelings, and looking at some ways that we can support ourselves to better do that. In my last video, I was talking more about how our emotional capacity gets undermined in childhood, how that gets set up, and how most of us really are prevented from fully feeling the full range of emotions and then using that information in our lives in a very practical way. So you might want to take a look at that video after checking this one out. And this video is going to look more at why it's important to feel our feelings a little bit as well. I'll go into that a little bit as well in this video, but also looking at kind of two different angles or approaches that we can take to really start building that capacity and start using our emotions and feeling our feelings and being reconnected with this vital part of ourselves as humans in a way that works for us. So why is it important to be in tune with your emotions or connected to some degree with your emotions? Really, because it's kind of like, if you want to break down our human selves in a very simplistic way, we have thoughts, we have emotions, feelings, and we have body sensations. And so we're literally missing out on a third of ourselves if we're not actually aware of what's going on inside of us at an emotional level. So it's like you're living kind of like 2/3 of yourself. And not only that, but if you're not listening to that information, you are missing out on really, really important signals that can help you to get out of the wrong situations, to be in the right situations, to make the right choices in your life, from everything from kind of daily choices and preferences to really, really important decisions in life. And also you're missing out on information about when your boundaries have been breached. So it's really serious stuff. Emotions are not just some sort of like superficial thing or something that we can dispense with, even though culturally you would think that's the case, because emotions are so kind of shamed and criticized and pathologized and seen as like something wrong with you. But actually we really, really, really need to know what's going on inside of us, because we're driven by our emotions, whether we like it or not. So emotions carry huge energy, and even when they're repressed, they find ways to sneak out covertly, in kind of passive ways, passive aggressive ways, or they really, really explode out and they create a lot of problems and they get acted out. So really, I mean, I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that like most of the world's problems today at a larger kind of global level connect back to individual people's lack of capacity to regulate their nervous systems, manage their emotions, and really connect back to people's own sense of themselves and kind of deficits that they're trying to make up for by acting it out in the world. But that's a topic for another day. So I'm just going to try and focus here. I have jotted down a few memory prompts here so that I don't digress too much. There's so much that I want to say about this topic, so this is by no means the definitive video on emotions, but I wanted to at least just start kind of putting some information out there on this topic that I feel so strongly about and that I feel is very important, because it just is such a big part of my work and in my own personal life as well. So that's kind of like briefly why I believe it's so important for us to be very aware of our emotions. And so, you know, one way of looking at it is that working directly with the emotions is important, yes. Becoming kind of emotionally intelligent, developing kind of a vocabulary, a capacity to recognize your emotions and kind of looking at your emotions themselves, locating them in your body, even getting like really kind of up close and personal, sensing into them and all of that. But really, in order to be able to do that, there is a kind of a foundational piece that's often missing, that we need to develop first. And that is a feeling, a sense, a capacity to be embodied, to actually be in our bodies, because our emotions are, of course, in our bodies. So even though when people are asked, you know, how you're feeling, they might kind of point to their heads or say, oh, I'm feeling really sad and I feel it here. And it might be located there for them, but often it's because we're very identified with here upwards. We are these huge cranial brains, and we are taught that rationality and intellect is so important and superior to emotions often in our culture. And, you know, obviously when people are only driven by their emotions, one can see why that would be the case. But there's been this kind of like flipping back I'm not going to go down too many historical kind of digressions, but I think we're at a point in time now where it's really important for us to integrate the head center, the heart center, the emotions, and the belly center, which is the more kind of animal kind of part of ourselves and animal response. That's in a very simplified way because we also have our kind of primal brain aspects. But we really need to incorporate our emotions in our lives a lot more. So to do that, we have to feel them in our bodies. And so we need to actually be able to sense ourselves, to actually feel ourselves in our skin, in our bones and our muscles and in our bodies. And so when we're living like most of our lives, for many of us, in our heads, and we are stimulated by devices and we have information overload coming at us more than anybody historically has ever had. No generation has ever been asked to process the degree of information than those of us who are alive on this planet today. So it's not necessarily that easy to be in one's body. So some people, as I was saying, are a little bit more in their kind of identified with their physical selves. They're very kind of embodied, more kind of sensual, sensorily kind of aware people, and they might not be so aware of their emotions or their minds. And some people are very emotionally identified. So I'm not saying we're all exclusively in our heads, but there's more of a balance to be found. So as I'm talking, you might kind of tune in and just notice how connected to yourself you are. Just notice, take a breath even now and just see, where are you at? You know, are you able to check in with yourself? Are you able to feel yourself where you're sitting or standing or walking or moving or whatever you're doing? And ask yourself, which part of you are you most identified with? Are you more in kind of the headspace? Do you more kind of reference your thoughts, or do you tend to notice when there's something going on in your body? Are you very in tune with the kind of signals that your body sends you, or do you talk about your feelings a lot? So even those of us who are quite identified with our feelings, it's often because we're not really holding them or managing them so well. So this work is for all of us to do. It's not just for those of us who live in our heads. So people who might talk about their emotions a lot, they might not necessarily have a capacity to actually feel them. So it's like they're being run by their emotions. So really, I think the first maybe useful route into working with your emotions, getting curious about your emotions, is to remember that they happen in our body, and that we are bigger than our emotions. So they are never bigger than us. We are the container. We're like the host for our emotions, and they live inside of us somewhere. They flow around, they move around, they jump around. However, it can feel like they're bigger than us. It can feel like they can overwhelm us, and that if we even tap into them a little bit, that they will just run riot and take us over. And that is because of what I was talking about in my previous video, which is that when we're little, they are bigger than us. They're bigger than our nervous systems that haven't grown yet. They overtake us, and we don't yet have the capacity to kind of regulate them and manage them. And so this is what we need to do as adults. That is one of the most important kind of aspects of being more emotionally intelligent, is to be able to feel them in your body and to develop in time a physical capacity to feel your feelings and to contain them inside of you. So at this point, I also want to mention that, you know, when there is trauma in the nervous system, which there is for so many people, not just because of a one-off event, but just kind of ongoing developmental traumas and wounds, it might not be safe to go jumping into, okay, I'm going to feel my feelings and be in my body. So it's really important to discern how comfortable you feel with that or not, and to get the right support to do that if it's something that feels very intense. And that's a part of this whole growth area, is to develop that discernment and to know, to kind of sense into what's right for you, not just from your head. So you're not making conclusions from your head alone and saying, oh, I mustn't be able to feel them, because just dropping down a little bit more if you can and sensing, okay, how far can I go here? Does a block come up? Am I energetically feeling a little bit frozen or cut off? Or how in flow am I with my feelings? Can I tolerate Can I tolerate anger in my body and kind of discharge it safely? Or does it feel like it's going to explode in me? Can I feel sadness? Where do I feel sadness? So starting to kind of ask yourself questions that are more body oriented can give you a kind of a touchstone, or like a kind of a marker for where you're at in your embodied capacity. So that was kind of one of the key things that I wanted to say in terms of approaches into working with emotions. And a part of this whole embodiment piece is it's not just about kind of getting like feeling your feelings and then getting lost in them and like swimming in your sadness or being overwhelmed by your anger or kind of becoming the emotion. The whole point of reconnecting with the body is to be able to actually contain the emotions and feel like you can safely touch into them and also kind of come back out of them, and that you are bigger than your emotions. And so a really important aspect of this is grounding. So that's maybe the second piece, and the second kind of approach is one part of being in your body and sensing your emotions is to feel grounded in that and to work on developing grounding. And so places that we can feel more grounded include in the belly, in the kind of the belly center, and in the legs. So again, tune in for yourself and see, how grounded do you feel? What does that word even mean? Does it feel like a kind of an abstract concept? Or do you know when you feel grounded? Do you have a sense that you can differentiate between when you're very up in your head and things are spinning a little bit more and you're not quite at home in yourself? And can you differentiate between that and when you feel like more like back down, landed in yourself, grounded, at home? All of that language or whatever kind of makes sense to you to help you differentiate those states. And so working with the belly center in the sense of focusing on that part of you in, say, guided meditation, or when you're taking a few breaths, breathing into the belly. That's all, that can be very supportive to developing this capacity to then feel your feelings in the rest of the body. And so for some people, grounding, it happens very easily when you're walking the forest, walking down the street, walking on, like feeling your feet against the ground as opposed to being at a computer all day long. Having a drink, doing something with your hands, cooking can feel grounding. Anything that brings you back out of your head and into your body. And so then when it comes to actually working more closely with emotions themselves, and starting to kind of develop that more kind of nuanced emotional literacy, then it can be helpful to get a little bit more detailed and to start distinguishing them as you get more comfortable in your body and as you feel more grounded in yourself. It can be very helpful to start kind of labeling your emotions and noticing when they're active. And if it's too hard to do at the very moment that they arise, or if you're not really in contact with yourself at that level, you might notice after, oh, okay, I said that thing, or I shut down, or I moved away, or I reacted in that way because I must have been feeling X, Y, Z, whatever emotion it was, and starting to kind of label and identify that for yourself. So there's tons of resources online, and I'm going to link to a few of them below this video. But I think that it's such a personal thing. So that's maybe a final point on all of this, is that this is highly, highly, highly individual. And so everything that I'm saying in this video is to be taken with your own kind of discernment, and how does this land with you? Does any of it resonate? Just because I'm saying it doesn't mean that it's necessarily true for you. This is my informed experience to the best of my ability, but it's really only just one take on it. And if I recorded this in a few weeks' time, I would no doubt be saying something a little bit different and maybe focusing the emphasis elsewhere. So really just giving yourself permission to do what works for you when it comes to getting curious about your emotions, sensing them, sensing yourself, feeling all of yourself, and also knowing where you're at, knowing how is your life at the moment. Do you feel resourced enough to start looking at this, or would this just be extra pressure? If you feel a little bit like fragmented in these crazy times and you don't feel very together, maybe it's not the most helpful thing. It's not like you have to. I know I was very kind of adamant about that point, and I think that ultimately we all do need to come back to knowing our emotions and feeling them and letting them flow on if we're going to be able to create a better world, a more sustainable, healthy, equitable world that works for all of us. But also, you might not be in that place right now. So really check in with yourself about that, and start feeling into what's right for you. So if you're even doing that, that's huge, to be able to check in with yourself overall and turn your attention inwards to any degree is really, really important. And maybe that's where it's at. It might be like a kind of a delicate check-in, and no, I'm not sure. And feeling that kind of no, that inner no, and that boundary, that's already really, really important. And just as powerful, really, to be checking in with yourself regularly to the best of your capacity, rather than kind of painstakingly trying to label all your emotions and delving into it all too fast. And then just a final, maybe just to kind of offer my 2 cents worth, that in my experience, this is a journey that is ongoing. You know, it is a life's endeavor. We can always keep learning more and more about our emotions, and it's also a journey that really requires a lot of commitment. You know, commitment to oneself, to keep turning the attention inwards, not being pulled into the external environment and all the distractions and reacting to others around us, because when we're doing that, we're just repeating what happened in childhood very often. It's kind of making the external world and other people more important than ourselves. And actually, when we do that, we don't know what's going on inside of us, and we react instead of responding. And then we're not as good people to be around, as good partners, teachers, leaders, healers, guides, parents. So it's actually in everybody's interest and in the collective interest for each of us to be very, very intimately involved in our inner worlds and get to know them a lot better. So it's a journey that takes commitment over time, and that takes a lot of courage. And courage, literally, you know, coming from the origins of the word cœur, the heart. So it takes like a real lion heart, you know, courage, true courage, not kind of external bravado, but that courage to go within and face things as they are. And it takes compassion. So that's the one that a lot of people struggle with, and it's a journey that I've been on as well. It takes self-compassion. There might be resistance to that, but and again, I'm going to link to some resources and meditations to do with self-compassion below this. But know that it does take those qualities. It's not an easy thing to do, but it's a very important thing to do. And it's it's an ongoing. It really is a path and a way of life. And so I hope that you find the right supports to do this. That you are. You find yourself in friendships and relationships and around people who are on that path as well, to help you on your journey. I will link some resources below. And if you are interested to receive any guided meditations or worksheets or anything like that on these topics, I have a couple of them on my website, so you can head over to embodymytruth.com and download a few of the worksheets I have there already. And I'm going to be posting up more audio kind of guided meditations and resources to help you to reconnect within and to stay more in tune with your body and drop out of the head and incorporate the heart center and the belly center a little bit more in your lives. So wishing you all the best on this journey to recovering this highly important aspect of yourself.